Germany at that time was a weary country. Not weary from work, but from defeat, from hunger, from the silence that remains when both pride and direction are lost. The streets were full of people, yet there was no movement in their eyes. Factories either stood idle or operated just enough to keep the smoke from fully dissipating. The automobile was not a symbol of freedom, but something unimaginable, almost audacious in a world where thoughts revolved around bread, not travel. Most families did not even own a bicycle, let alone a vehicle. Trains were overcrowded, roads were poor, and villages were cut off from towns. The country sought a way to reconnect, yet it did not know how. In that vacuum, between despair and need, an idea emerged that sounded simple, almost naive. A car for the common person, not luxury, not power, not prestige. Just a machine that starts every time, asks for little, and can endure reality as it is. This idea did not come from comfortable offices. It came from the sense that a people without movement remained trapped. And that is why it was dangerous, because it offered hope in a time when hope could easily be wielded as a weapon. In a country searching for salvation, every great idea carried a shadow, and Volkswagen, from the very beginning, carried both. The idea did not sound revolutionary. It had no shine, no bold words. It was modest, almost too modest for the time it was spoken. A car anyone could afford. A vehicle that required no wealth, knowledge, or special status. Just a key, a road, and the will to move forward. But precisely in that simplicity lay its power. In a country seeking direction, the idea of a car for the people quickly became more than a technical project. It became a symbol, a promise that normal life could return, that families could travel together, that work was no longer miles away, but within reach. The car was not conceived as luxury, but as a tool, an extension of everyday life. But every great idea in such a time had two sides. On one side, the genuine need of the common person. On the other, the power that recognized how strong such a promise could be. The idea of Volkswagen began to take shape not only as a technical endeavor, but as a political symbol, something to be seen, displayed, and repeated. The car for the people was no longer merely a vehicle. It became a message. And once messages are released into the world, they rarely remain pure. Ferdinand Porsche was not a man of grand speeches. He did not sell dreams with words, but with drawings, lines, and gears. His world was mechanical, precise, cold at first glance, yet deeply passionate inside. From an early age, he believed that a machine must serve a purpose, not an ego. Beauty came only later, as a consequence of function, never as an end in itself. Porsche was obsessed with the idea of simplicity. Fewer parts meant fewer breakdowns. Less complexity meant greater reliability. To him, a car was a living being, something that had to breathe, move effortlessly, withstand the mistakes of its driver, and endure the harshness of the road. He did not care who would like the car, only whether it could endure. At that moment, his philosophy fit perfectly with the idea of a car for the people. It was a meeting of need and character. Porsche did not think in symbols or politics. He thought about an engine that could run for hours, a chassis that would not crack on bad asphalt, a vehicle that would not demand much from someone who already had very little. And precisely for that reason, without grand intention, he became a key figure in a story that would outlive him and define him forever. As the idea took shape, it became clear that such a project could not survive alone. It needed strength, money, infrastructure. And the strength of that time did not come quietly. It came with clear demands, deadlines, and expectations. The car for the people had to be more than a means of transport. It had to be proof that the system worked. The development of the first Volkswagen took place under constant pressure. Every line on paper carried the weight of someone's authority. Mistakes were not allowed, delays were non-existent. Factories were erected quickly, sometimes faster than reason could follow. In that speed, the boundary between engineering pride and coercion blurred. Porsche and his team worked with a focus bordering on exhaustion. Prototypes appeared and vanished, repaired, broken, reassembled. The goal was clear: a simple car that could be produced in enormous quantities. But beneath the steel and screws lay an uneasy truth. This car did not grow in freedom. It grew in the shadow of power, where technical success did not always mean moral purity. Volkswagen was taking shape, but even then it bore a burden that would not be easily lifted. At the moment when the car was nearly ready to travel the roads of the common person, the road vanished. Instead of families and luggage, factories began filling halls with something else. The idea of Volkswagen was pushed aside, quietly, without explanation. Dreams of movement were replaced by the need for a state preparing for conflict with no return. Factories that were meant to produce cars for the people now served the war. Assembly lines were adapted, plans changed, priorities erased. The car that was meant to connect people became part of a machinery that separated them. The workforce shrank, and those who remained worked under conditions that blurred the line between labor and punishment. The town around the factory slowly lost its life. Instead of the hum of progress, sirens and the silence that followed were heard. The idea of Volkswagen, still young, almost vanished before it had truly lived. What was meant to be a symbol of normal life became a reminder of how quickly dreams can be extinguished when the world chooses a different path. War destroys not only buildings and roads, it interrupts stories. And the story of Volkswagen remained unfinished, left to wait for another time. When the noise finally subsided, the silence was heavier than any sound. Germany was a country without breath, without direction, without illusions. Factories stood half empty, walls bombed, machines rusted before they had time to age. Among them, the facilities meant to be the heart of Volkswagen. Instead of a beginning, they faced an end. The question was not how to continue, but whether it even made sense to try. The name carried a burden of the past that no one wanted to bear. For many, Volkswagen was not a project, but a reminder of what they wished to escape. Serious ideas existed to close the factory, dismantle it, sell it in parts, as just another mistake meant to disappear. Yet beneath the ruins, the machines still existed. They were not perfect, but they worked. And wherever something could still be set in motion, the question of survival arose. In a country learning to survive again, Volkswagen stood on the edge of oblivion, but also on the threshold of a new chance. There were no grand plans, only the modest thought that perhaps, if the burden of the past could be removed, this idea could still find a reason to exist. Salvation did not arrive with grand words or visions promising miracles. It came quietly, almost imperceptibly, in the form of a decision not to let something die. While many saw ruins and guilt, someone saw a tool that could still function. The factory was not a symbol, it was a means. And means are not discarded while they can still serve. Under new management, without emotion or nostalgia, Volkswagen was given a chance to breathe again. There was no talk of pride, only function. Production began of what already existed, without modifications, without grand ambitions. Just proof that something could be made, delivered, used. Workers slowly returned, not out of faith in the brand, but out of necessity to survive. Each car produced was a small act of normalcy in a world just learning what peace meant. The unexpected savior did not try to change Volkswagen's story. It simply gave it a chance to continue. And sometimes that is enough. Because some ideas do not die from ill intent, but because they are never given a second chance. Volkswagen, almost by accident, received that chance. At first, no one took it seriously. It had a strange shape, a rear engine, and a sound that promised little power. It did not look like a car that would conquer the world. And that is exactly why it succeeded. The Beetle was simple, stubborn, and reliable, just like the people who drove it. It started when others wouldn't, traveled where others broke down, asked little, and gave much. As borders reopened, Volkswagen began to expand beyond Germany. Without aggressive marketing, without grand promises, the car spoke for itself. In cold countries, in warm regions, on poor roads, and in cities just being built, the Beetle performed the same. It carried people to work, brought them home, connecting the points of everyday life. Gradually, it became more than a means of transport. It became a symbol of modest success, a sign that normal life had returned. Volkswagen experienced trust for the first time. Sales grew, factories expanded, but without losing the core idea. The Beetle did not promise status, only reliability. And in a world weary of grand stories, it was precisely this quiet consistency that allowed Volkswagen, step by step, to conquer the planet. Success did not come without consequences. As the Beetle conquered the roads of the world, expectations grew. Volkswagen was no longer just a symbol of recovery, but a company expected to deliver the same miracle, again and again. Factories worked at full capacity, numbers rose, and with them, the pressure to remain infallible. The simplicity that was once its strength began to be perceived as a limitation. The world changed, markets demanded more power, more comfort, more choices. And Volkswagen had to decide whether to remain faithful to one car or risk moving forward. Each decision carried the fear of losing what was hard-earned: trust. Within the company, unrest emerged. Engineers demanded progress, management stability, the market diversity. Growth, once a sign of success, now became a burden. Because the bigger the brand, the more painful the fall. Volkswagen entered a phase where being reliable was no longer enough. It had to prove itself, adapt, evolve. And changes, however necessary, always carry the risk of losing part of the soul that started it all. With growth came change. Volkswagen was no longer just the Beetle or a simple car for the people. New models emerged, new vehicles promising more power, more space, more prestige. Each new line carried the weight of the market, ambitions, and expectations far exceeding the original modesty. The brand expanded, factories grew, and the idea of a simple, reliable car began to mingle with the demands of the corporate world. What was once a symbol of trust became business strategy. New models tried to satisfy everyone, both those seeking luxury and those seeking functionality, while retaining the reliability the Beetle had once guaranteed. In this pursuit of perfection, Volkswagen lost some of its innocence, the simplicity and immediacy that had made it magical. Yet, despite the changes, the core philosophy remained: a car should serve people, connect, transport, and ease life. Volkswagen was now more than a vehicle. It became a brand with character, its own identity, a history that neither growth nor corporate ambitions could erase. And each new line of cars served as a reminder that evolution comes at a cost. Volkswagen's rise was not without blemishes. As the brand grew, so did the decisions carrying risk, and sometimes mistakes. It was not easy to balance tradition, reliability, and the desire to show power and innovation. Some decisions were misjudged, some models fell short of expectations, and the reputation that had built trust over decades sometimes cracked under the weight of ambition. Every mistake resonated louder than before. The world began to see Volkswagen not only as a symbol of success, but also as a brand that could stumble. The public and the market did not forget easily. Trust is fragile, and once lost, hard to regain. Within the company, criticism grew. Tension was felt between management and engineers, between past and present. Yet these mistakes did not destroy the spirit of the brand. They became part of the lesson Volkswagen had to learn. Strength comes not only from technical precision or global presence, but from the ability to admit mistakes, correct them, and move forward, stronger and wiser. Mistakes were blows, but they did not extinguish Volkswagen's story. On the contrary, they demonstrated how much perseverance is needed to maintain and continue history. After mistakes shook trust, Volkswagen stood before the mirror of its own history. It was not easy to admit where it had strayed, nor did decisions about change come lightly. Every new technology, every innovative model, every electric idea was a test, not just for the machine, but for the soul of the brand. The company began to reassess itself, seeking ways to correct past wrongs and create something that would last. Electric cars, modern design, better efficiency. All of this was not just a step forward in technology, but an act of redemption. Volkswagen sought to show the world that it could be more than its mistakes, more than its controversies, that it could once again be a symbol of reliability and simple human functionality. But redemption is not easy. Every success requires the price of patience, dedication, and authenticity. Every battery line, every new model leaving the factory carries the weight of the past. And yet, step by step, Volkswagen shows that mistakes can be turned into strength, trust can be regained, and the car, ordinary, simple, reliable, can still be more than a machine. It can be a symbol of hope. Today, the name Volkswagen is no longer just the name of a car. It has become a symbol of industry, history, and the harsh lessons of time. With modern factories pulsing with technology, with models combining electricity, power, and design, Volkswagen is a brand looking to the future, yet not forgetting where it came from. Every car that rolls off the production line carries a piece of that past, both its weight and its lesson. The brand has evolved, but its core remains. A car that connects people, transports, eases life, now with broader horizons and ambition. A global network, innovations in electric and autonomous vehicles, and memories of small workshops, first sketches and prototypes, all create a layered story that is not only about sales, but about the survival of an idea. Volkswagen today is more than a machine. It is a story of perseverance, of people who believed when no one else did, of an idea that survived wars, mistakes, and doubts, and ultimately became part of the lives of millions. And as each car travels the roads of the world, it carries with it a quiet yet undeniable question. How powerful can a simple idea be when it survives everything life throws its way? Volkswagen is not just a brand, it is a story the world cannot forget. Every car, every line, every factory machine carries shadows and light from past times. An idea born from poverty and ruins, surviving wars, mistakes, and doubts, now stands as a symbol of strength, but also a warning. Volkswagen's legacy is layered, perseverance and innovation, but also the weight of history that can never be fully erased. Every generation entering this brand must carry that legacy: reliability, simplicity, but also caution. Because Volkswagen is not just a car that drives, it is a machine that carries a story, silently reminding us that the roads we travel are shaped by decisions, mistakes, and attempts to change the world a little. And as the world continues to move, Volkswagen remains a quiet, persistent link between past and future, reminding us how immense the power of a simple idea can be when given the chance to survive.